Hey there, friend. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode 51 of the Positioning to Profit podcast. Today's episode is featuring a friend of mine. Her name is Lisa Carpenter. She is a master resiliency coach, master coach, and she has a podcast herself. It's called the Full Frontal Living Podcast. And I was most recently on, I think a couple weeks back, and we talked about the topic of self-trust. I thought it was so good and so relevant to my tribe that I asked her, hey, can I share it on my podcast? She said, yes, absolutely. So before we start, I do want to let you know that I have a boot camp starting. So if you are not sure of your positioning or why you're not standing out enough or how to stand out, I invite you to check out pivotyourpositioning.com, pivotyourpositioning.com. So P-I-V-O-T, yourpositioning.com. And that is going to take you to a mind map. And that mind map has a little online video tutorial. But then the best part is it's going to invite you to the boot camp. It's 12 days. We start June 15th. And the best part, it's absolutely free. So all you have to do is head on over to pivotyourpositioning.com and I'll see you over there. All right, let's get on with the show. Here we go. Hey there, I'm Patty Dominguez. You're about to discover what it means to position your brand and your business to stand out. This show explores the stories of small business owners just like you who are bringing their message out to the world and impacting their tribe. So if you want to take your business to a category of one status, then hang with me because this podcast shares everything you need to know about how to be more prolific with your brand so that you can have more profits.
Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Full Frontal Living podcast. And today I'm bringing to you another one of my good friends and colleagues and co-coaches behind the doors of Jim Fortin's transformational coaching program. It's Patty Dominguez. So you are going to want to tune into this episode if you are an entrepreneur running your own business. But I think there's going to be a lot of nuggets of wisdom in here, even if you're not running your own business, because we're going to talk about self-trust and let this conversation take us where it goes. So Patty is a positioning expert for those of us who are running our businesses, which is such an important thing to step into, knowing exactly what you do super well, and then being able to articulate it, which I know I really have had a problem with. But Patty, I would love for you to fully introduce yourself and tell my listeners a little bit about you and go into a little bit deeper kind of how you support people.
Lisa, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Such an honor. And before we hit the go live, we were just kind of thinking, we're like, because of the moon and everything going on. And I love how you always, from your positioning standpoint, are perfectly imperfect. I mean, that's part of your brand, your personality. And I absolutely love that. So I always I'm taking a look at, the way that somebody shows up, right? If they're an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur. So what I most often see is if I can ask somebody, hey, what do you do? And if the feedback is, oh, I'm a coach or I'm a this or that, you've literally commoditized what you do. And so the important thing is, how do you position your brand, yourself, your value in a way that shows up, right? As uniquely as possible. Because you never want to be more of the same. You never want to be copycat. And so I really help people wrap their heads around what is it that makes them unique? Who are they, right? Who are they as a solopreneur and entrepreneur? And more importantly, what is it that they stand for? Because in short, what positioning is it's the mind share that you capture in someone's head. Right? It's not the branding. It's not the visual side of things. It really is the strategy side of things where they have a carefully crafted story around how they are showing up. And that's it. And in essence, I mean, it comes from my corporate, the years that I was in corporate where there were so many, I mean, literally hundreds of hours around how we would launch a brand. I mean, this is like brigades of people and all these things. And I had, and I talk about this when I give my lives. And I said, I had this like snap epiphany when somebody was talking about that. And I was working on a corporate project and looked around the room, there's all these people, and it was for it was for the launch of a chocolate chip cookie. And I was like, my gosh, is this for a cookie? And we don't do this for ourselves. And therein lied the opportunity. I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to focus on.
Oh my God, that's amazing. It's so interesting because positioning is all about allowing yourself to stand out.
Yes.
But so many of us are afraid to stand out, and we're searching for that perfect thing. We're trying to get it right, instead of really just stepping into who we are and letting that shine. And I know in my own brand, things didn't really change for me in my business until I allowed myself to really just say, you know what, my brand is a little messy. My Instagram, not super visually pleasing, but it's all me. And I think in a world where I was going to say, so many people put expectations on us, but the truth is, as human beings, we put high expectations on ourselves. At least my listeners do. And I know that I did that for myself. I think it's really important that in terms of my own positioning in the market, that I allow people to see what's possible when you're not doing it perfect and when you're not trying to get it right and you're just willing to show up and kind of find your way. And I just see so many people thinking, well, if I've got the right branding and the right colors and the right this and the right that everything will happen. And I had all of that stuff and I was still really, really struggling. So can you talk a little bit how you unravel people from that place of not trusting, we'll just go here, not trusting that who they are and what they offer is enough, and how you walk them into having the courage to stand out?
Yeah, well, therein lies the loaded question, right? Because I think everybody has the notion that going into that, they're looking at the way that other people have established their brands. So you see a lot of this lady boss, lady this, or, I'm a boss babe and whatever, all these things, right? And it's so generic and overplayed at this point that people feel that they have to hire the photographer, and then they're running in the fields and jumping in a pool of, I don't know. Yeah, yes, sprinkles and glitter. And I'm like, yo, this is so not aligned with who you are, right? And so there is a place, I suppose, if you want to commoditize what it is that you do, to take that approach. But I happen to think that, for me to do that, to be jumping in a vat of sprinkles is so not on brand for me, right? I'm direct and I'm brash and I swear sometimes. I don't swear all the time, but sometimes to punctuate a thought, and just how I am. And you have a personality to your brand as well. And so it's really about honing in. And so from a positioning standpoint, one of the first things I ask is, who are you, right? Who are you really? Don't tell me who you admire. And so we go through this whole thing of okay, if you were a car, what kind of car would you be? If you were a pair of shoes, what kind of shoes would you be, right? And so it's just a matter of drilling down and really finding your brand and what it is that you stand for. And more importantly, there are things that are important from a positioning standpoint that so many people miss that you have to have. So are you people focused, right? Are you product focused? Are you a pioneer where you're introducing something so exclusive in the market that nobody else has seen it before? And so whether you're people, product, or pioneer focused, there's a lot of different things that come into play, right? So the approach is going to be so unique depending on where your focus is. So I see what you do, Lisa, and you're so clearly people, right? You're people focused.
Yeah.
That's why and again, it goes with your values, right? Having that rapport one-on-one, right? To call you and say you're product focused, it would just be such an outlier. So that's why having a whole host of products and online things, you would probably say, not for me, right? Now you've come to that place from a discerning standpoint where because I've seen it live, where you challenge, right? Somebody who is your mentor, an expert telling you what you should do. And you're like, no, it doesn't feel right to me. So even if you don't go with a positioning expert to help you with this, but just how does it feel, right? Like, is it aligning with your values? Is it true to the core of how you want to show up? And I always say, if it's light and right, then it's something to hang your hat on. If it's feeling heavy, it's a hell no. And it's okay to be that way, right? But to think that your business has to be in a box, like cookie cutter, sprinkles, rainbows, and like you running through the fields with flowers in your hair. If that's you, that's cool. But guess what? It doesn't have to be. And you don't have to have 5,000 products out there. Just ask yourself, am I people focused? Am I product focused? Am I a pioneer, like an innovator coming with something new? And even starting out with something so simple as that, I think that'd be really helpful.
I love this conversation. I knew we were going to kind of weave down different paths. So one of the reasons that I love Patty so much is that I think we need more women in this area. Because what I see is a lot of bro marketing. I'm going to just call it that. We're going to call it bro marketing. One of my good friends, Rachel Cook, calls it bro marketing. And
that's hysterical.
There's something that was part of my problem. So just, Patty knows this backstory. I'll share it with you guys. I spent a lot of years trying really, really hard in my business to make things work that weren't working. And part of that was because I was bouncing from course to course, looking for the answer, looking for the person to give me the right strategy, the right course, the right programming, everything. And it really wasn't until I said, screw it, like all of them, I'm letting go of everything. And, I went through a period of really burning down things in my business. I stopped launching products. So I still have products. They're still available to my clients, and we're looking at packaging them differently. But I literally, I deleted thousands of people off my list. I left groups. I said, thank you to mentors, thank you, and no thank you, and left communities, not because I didn't think they were amazing people, but the person that I needed to listen to myself was the person I needed to listen to the most was myself. And that's, I wasn't tuning into my intuition. And that is inherently that feminine energy. So here I was letting my masculine energy, this doing part of me that thought I could do my way to the results I wanted, take over, instead of tuning into the part of me that went, wait a minute, what are my values? What is my intuition telling me? And I still remember that moment on the call. We were all on this call with a mentor of ours. And they'd said, I think you should be running a group program and you should launch this. And this is the way to get from, point A to point B. And I said, no, I actually, one of my values is intimacy. And I only want to work with people one-to-one. And I'm going to grow my business until my one-to-one practice is full. And then I'll see. And, since then I've done some small group programs. I'm going to be launching another very intimate group of 5 to 8 women. But that is how I roll. And it created massive success in my business when I had the courage to say, what if I have the answers? What if I just trust myself instead of giving away my power to everybody else? And this happens all the time, not just in business, but in our personal lives. So I would love if you could kind of speak on that and how it shows up for, how it showed up for you in your own life and business, and how you see it showing up for clients.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a step back and say that when I saw you do that, because I saw it live, I was like, I love her, because you literally challenged the mentor, and most people would not, because they'd be like, okay, this is what you think. And so that's really the first part of self-trust. And it takes balls, and you have to be vulnerable at the same time, right? It's having courage. Like when I heard that you pretty much took your email list and were just like, I don't know, you blew that thing up and you're like, let me refresh this scene here because it's not working for me anymore. And so I can just tell you that most people are very hung up with like, how many people are on my email list? I'm like, stop thinking about how many people are on your email list and think about the quality of engagement, because that's what it's about. And people are fixated on these metrics, like how many people are on my list, how many products do I have out there, right? And even the challenge that the mentor had at the time to say, this is what you should do. Well, according to who, right? And you were very steadfast in honoring yourself and what felt, like I say, what feels light and right, and just communicating it openly. And so when you start to really do that, you can then, right? So you showed courage, you were vulnerable AF, you were communicating clearly and openly of what it is that you wanted. And at the same time, you managed the outcome, right? Like, so it's not just throwing things to the wind to be like, oh, I'm just going to be airy fairy buddy. No, you were very calculated, and there's just steps to this whole process, right? Keeping track of the wins and doing these things that you were doing. But at the end of the day, you were really looking at honoring the way you wanted to show up in your business, what felt right for you, the things that resonated with you. I thought it was magical. And it's such an indication of the fact that you trusted yourself, that the outcome has been exponentially, it's been fantastic for you, right? If I'm understanding the successes that you've had.
I think it's also important to note that in that moment, that was hard. It did take courage because he pushed back a little bit. And I was like,
he sure did.
Nope, this is what I was going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And this is all that I'm going to do. Because there's so many people out there telling you, like, you'll never, you won't be able to create the income that you want unless you sell to groups. Well, I kind of took a step back and said, well, what do I want for my life? And how much money do I need to have an extraordinary life? Mm-hmm. And I can totally create that one-to-one while still holding my boundaries without working myself into a hole in the ground. But, when I got off that call, just so I'm being completely transparent, I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm such a badass. Look at me. I pushed back at my mentor. I was like, holy fuck, did I just do that? And what am I thinking? Like, who do I think I am to think that I know what's better for me? And that night I didn't sleep well because I was like, okay, like I almost had anxiety. That part of me that was, and this was what was powerful about it for me. That part of me that has spent so many years of my life seeking the approval of others in order to have permission to do what I wanted to do. That part of me was like, what have you done here? Like, what have you done? And I was like, so it's going to be okay. Like, let it go. And I literally had to work through that trigger and that part of me and just make peace with it and say, I'm going to do this thing. And when I did the thing and I committed to, this is all that I'm doing. I mean, I literally turned my business around in under 10 months.
Okay, we're about halfway through with this episode, but I wanted to make sure that you knew about my new Positioning to Profit quiz so that you can discover how to use the key pillars of positioning to give yourself the ultimate edge for your business. It's an assessment, personalized plan of action to overcome these roadblocks that are keeping you from even more profit. So head on over to positioningquiz.com. All right, let's continue with the show. It was unbelievable. And here's the whole other side of it is that our body, because it's so different than the way that we've been operating, you and I both know, it's just fight, flight, or freeze, right? So you have to recognize like, okay, this is just my reptilian brain trying to protect me, right? It's how my brain is wired. Okay, yes, but you're not being chased by a tiger or a bear. So just kind of work through that, right? To work through the uncomfortability. And to that point, I think the theme of this all is around self-trust. And what if I did trust, right? What if I did trust where I do want to go and just trust your gut? I mean, how many times do we feel fixated, especially as women? In my experience, let me caveat by saying that it's like we have to like question ourselves and look externally as if the answers are external. And yes, it's okay to inquire and just kind of get pulse checks and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, just like go with your gut and then just move. And that's what you did, right? Like you trusted your gut in spite of it being scary, in spite of potential like lashback or whatever. And you just moved into it and you took action. So you just kind of, and I always envision it, honestly, Lisa, like I'm walking through a wall of fire, right? It's uncomfortable and you're like questioning yourself, but you know what? Some of the best wins for me personally have happened when I've done that. It's happened with you. I'm about to do it again, right? There's a part of my business that last year I thought was a good idea. And I'm like, is this bringing me joy? No, I had to like Marie Kondo my business. Like, is that bringing me joy? No. And I just have to, and I'm seeing like and here's the magic for me, the exchange of energy. Like when I'm doing X, is this bringing me joy? Am I getting fulfilled? Is my tank being full? No, it's not. Okay, well then take that out of the mix, because what does bring me joy are the things that I'm doing and the people that I'm attracting. And I'm making a lot more money when I do that. And so therein lies the opportunity, is just to trust ourselves, go beyond the uncomfortability, walk through that wall of fire, and just know, like, is it light and right? That's literally what I ask myself. And if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no for me.
So true. You know, what I learned from all of this, when we hand over our power thinking that somebody else has the answer for us, what really that was giving me, and the pattern that allowed me to stay in, was not taking responsibility for what I actually wanted. And when you trust yourself, it means you have to really show up as your best friend and your best coach, because whether you succeed or fail or trip or skin your knees or whatever, you have to be 100% responsible for the outcome. Whereas if you're constantly looking for someone else to have the answer for you, there's this very disempowered energy behind it. You get to almost stay in that place of victimhood, struggle, suffering, and not really taking responsibility. And this part around really looking at your business and saying, what am I doing here? What's working and what's not working? And having the courage to let go of stuff, even when it might not even fully seem like, it's that like, what am I doing here? Because when I deleted my list, the subject line was, I'm deleting you. And here's who I'm working with now. And if you want to stay, you have to click this link. So it wasn't even people had to decide to stay on my list. And I deleted over 5,000 people. But again, it's like my list felt so heavy, because every time I wrote to them, my open rate was so low. So I wasn't inspired to write, because that's like standing in the middle of a room yelling at people and everybody's turned facing the opposite way. So nothing around what I did made any sense. But I also knew that if I kept this heavy energy in my business and in my life, that it was going to guarantee me that I was shutting down any possibility of change. And this is what people have to understand around self-trust. It's doing things you've never done before, because it puts you into that place of possibility and it moves you out of fear. So in all areas, even with the women that I'm working with around their relationship with food and their bodies and how they're taking care of themselves, if we peel back all the layers on that, what they're really struggling with is trusting themselves to take care of themselves. Which is pretty crazy, because the women I work with are high functioning. They are overdoers. They are the person that you want if there's a catastrophe. They're the person you want in a crisis, because they know how to do all the things and organize all the people. They take care of everybody. Yet underneath it all, they don't believe that they can trust themselves to take care of themselves. So this idea of self-trust isn't just something that comes up in our businesses. It comes up in our personal lives as well.
Oh my God, it comes up everywhere. And as you were saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I deal with that too, right? So when I'm challenging my clients on the positioning front, like showing up in such a way that they're like, what? Well, I don't know. I'm like, you cannot wait anyone to like anoint you the expert. You have to claim the expert status. You got to trust yourself that you're going to be able to back it up, because from what you're telling me, you can back it up. So this theme of self-trust crosses all areas of life. It's not just in your business, your personal life, whether your weight, your relationships or whatnot. My gosh, it is so fundamentally key in order to move the needle in whatever it is that you're doing. For sure.
I totally agree. It's such a foundational piece. And when I just, this is what everybody can consider. Pretty much everything you've done in your life, you never knew you didn't know how to do it until you did it. I didn't know how to raise children until I had children. I didn't know how to grow a business until I grew a business. I didn't know how to coach until I started coaching. And I was able to learn all these different things because at the end of the day, I know I'm going to figure it out. So if you're the type of person who knows you're always going to figure it out, why specifically would you not trust yourself?
Right? Exactly.
My people, your people, these are all ambitious go-getters and doers. Like, we always figure things out. So why are we not trusting ourselves? Why can't we peel that back and take it deeper? And if you are willing to sink into that ability to trust yourself, what things would you do in your life? What conversations would you have? What actions would you take? How would you show up differently? Because this really changed so much for me. And I know it's changed so much for you, Patty.
Absolutely.
Just get to that place. So where can people go to find out more about you and dig into your genius? Because like I said, in a sea of bro marketers, Patty is just like, I keep telling her, please finish your book. Please write your book. Please finish your book. Because she really is an expert in this field and brings such a beautiful feminine energy, but a feminine energy in a very powerful way. I think when we say feminine energy, sometimes women are like, ooh, I don't want that feminine energy.
I will definitely, if you go to my website, you will not see me like, jumping in a vat of sprinkles and having rainbows and cotton candy and that stuff around me. That's just like not me. Not that there's anything wrong with that, if that's your brand, but that's definitely not me. I think probably the easiest thing that I think is of tremendous value is it's a quiz that I've come up with, and it really is intended to be a pulse check for you. So if you go to positioningquiz.com, it will have these series of questions. And again, with the intention of it to be a pulse check on how you're doing with your positioning. And then on the back end of my email list, again, straight value, like it's actually a little mini course I used to charge for, and I've chunked it up and I'm giving it away for free. So even if you do nothing else and do that, I promise you it's going to be of value to you. And again, you deserve to go through it just to pulse check to say, is my positioning standing out, or am I being a copycat, or is there more profit potential that I could be doing in my business that I'm leaving on the table? So that's really the intention for it.
That's amazing. And then your website is Patty Dominguez.
Yes.
DOMINGUEZ.
Z. Yes, correct.
Z or Z, depending on where you are in the world. And I'll put all this in the show notes. And Patty, you also have an amazing podcast as well. And I would love for you to share your podcast so people can go and subscribe and listen to your wisdom.
Positioning to Profit is my podcast. You can find it on iTunes. It started out with another angle, and then I pivoted over to that just because I love the stories. There's been a lot of great interviews that I've had with people who are shifting, moving, changing, self-trusting, to your point. I would definitely love to have you back on to talk about this story, because I found what you did was so ballsy, and that's a perfect example of your repositioning, right? In some cases, you're like, well, I'm not new, I'm seasoned. Well, if the earning isn't where you want it to be, then it's just a matter of repositioning it. And so for you, that's exactly what you did. And for you, it's been hugely rewarding. So those types of stories where people can join and just kind of grab a nugget or two, I find that to be extremely not only heartwarming for me when somebody emails me and says, "Oh my God, that was so helpful. Thank you." You know what I mean? This is why we do what we do, right, Lisa? Like you get a lot of great feedback on your podcast too. And so it's just it's coming from such a good place that I love doing it. I really do.
We learn from stories, we
For
learn from
sure.
stories, and it's so easy to look at people who you see having a certain amount of success, although you're just making interpretations about that, put them on a pedestal and then make yourself feel small. And the truth is, like, it was really, really challenging for me for many years moving my business online. So even though I had all the external markers of success, I was still really struggling. And I mean, I remember when I relaunched my new brand, and then within like 3 months, I'm like, I don't understand my message. Like, that is how much I unplugged from trusting myself. Is I was like, I couldn't even understand my own message. And of course I knew my message. I was just so scared to fully step into it. And because it meant I had to let so much of what my focus had been on my business, I had to let it go. So I had to find a new place for it. It wasn't about, burn it all down or take it behind the barn and shoot it, but it was redefining how it was going to work. And now it fits in beautifully. It's one of the pillars that I talk about, but it's not what I lead from. It's not what I'm truly passionate about, but I had to have the courage to step into that. And even today, in times of COVID, I'm finding that the message that I'm showing up with is really needed. And people are so also at the same time, like, what is this? What feel my feelings? Like, who wants to do that? But the universe has literally put us in a position where we're being forced to look at how our emotions come into play and how our behaviors show up because of them. So
I absolutely think if I could just close out with this one idea, because I echo the sentiment of what you're saying. I think now more than ever, the people that have that, so I always equate it to this, like when who you are and how you show up to be is one and the same. Like you are so aligned and you will just attract things and you'll have a higher vibration. You'll have a higher sense of being. You'll have more fulfillment. And so, yes, you do need to feel into those things, right? And so working with people like what we do, right? You're doing that on a personal level for the self-love, self-care level, for the emotional resiliency level. I'm doing things from the business standpoint, like with your brand and your offers. Is it aligned? Does it make sense? How are you showing up? Right? Because if you're playing small and you're trying to show up like one way, listen, the bullshit meter is a very high, and so it's a matter of really tapping into what's the real story here. And that's what I do. That's what you do in our own ways. I just kind of had that epiphany. I'm like, oh my God, we actually do the same thing, right? In different arenas. But I couldn't agree with you more. It's like now more than ever, people need that.
I agree. Patty, you are my go-to person. You know this. Patty's one of my favorite people to be in Voxer with. I just think you have so much knowledge, like you just have so much wisdom. And I'm so glad that you are really standing up and speaking out more and really owning your own leadership as you lead other people into theirs, because people really do need what we have right now.
I
Because
appreciate that, Lisa. You're awesome. You're so amazing.
we can't help people if we're not willing to stand up and have a bigger voice. And
Yeah.
I love that you really support, I really love that you support people finding that voice for themselves in a way that feels good, that allows them to feel courageous, because sometimes you need somebody else to see you as you are in order for you to embrace seeing yourself through their lens.
Well, I couldn't agree more in that all the professional athletes have that, all the high performing people have that. And if you think that you're going to grow your business on your own or take care of your shit that you have on a personal level without any guidance or whatever, just by picking up a book, it's a slow boat to China, as our mentor says.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
like, why not allow our expertise and hindsight to be your foresight? Like, why wouldn't you? But again,
Exactly. Anyways, Patty, it has been such a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
me.
Lisa.
I am really loving, I haven't had a ton of guests on the podcast, but I've been playing with it because I just know that the people that I know, my audience needs to know. Somebody in my audience needs to know that you exist and that you are there to help them. So I will put all the links in the show notes for where you can find Patty, where you can go and take her quiz, where you can listen to her podcast, and where you can find her on social, because although she doesn't love being on social, she is on social.
You're still trying to get me. You're like, will you
Right.
freaking show up on your social?
Some of the best people aren't really on social because we're too busy to be on social, right? We're out doing the work we need to do in the world. So we're not just hanging out on social, collecting vanity metrics.
No, I have no interest in that. But I know there's a place and a time for everything, for sure. And I fully admit you could totally call me out. I have to get better about that. I promise you I will.
I have people that can help you with that. My team is now supporting me with my social, because it just, can't do all the things, and I got to stay in my zone of genius, as do you. So
exactly.
Thank you so much for coming on, Patty. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I
appreciate you, Lisa. I adore you. You're amazing. Thank you so much for checking out the Positioning to Profit podcast. If you haven't already done so, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. And also, it would mean the world to me if you would take a quick moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast player. It really helps to get the word out about the podcast and, of course, the featured guests. And lastly, please make sure to connect with me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on all of them. And use hashtag positioning to profit so that I can search you out and connect that way too. All right. Thanks so much. See you next time.